Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Ever since Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau took over the Star Wars galaxy with The Mandalorian and now the Book of Boba Fett, something has felt off with Star Wars. At first, I wasn't really sure what it was. Maybe it's a new type of color grading, or the lighting effect from those new massive CGI walls. Perhaps it was the use of puppets combined with digital effects to make the various aliens in these shows come alive. But no, it wasn't that at all. What felt off was the Tuscan Raiders, aka the Sand People. In the original trilogy, they were these weird desert bandits that populated the environment to make the hero's journey a bit tougher. In the prequel trilogy, the Sand People were given a much bigger role, and they play a huge part in turning Anakin Skywalker towards the dark side when they murder his mom. The Tuskens became a sign of chaos and evil on the planet, their backstory became more filled out, and we found out that these weren't just some bandits, but an entire race of very territorial aliens who worship water and were violent Luddites. The Tuskens soon became the target of Anakin and later on Darth Vader's wrath. But the Tuscan Raiders we see in The Mandalorian and in the Book of Boba Fett are quite different. Initially, these Tuscan Raiders seem just as scary as their previous versions. But what has changed during these new interactions between the Tuskens and outsiders is not just the Tuscan Raiders, but the actual individuals they're interacting with. It's no longer just terrified moisture farmers and slave boys who have been brought up to fear and hate these aliens because they're involved in a multi-generational war of territory against them. Now we have seasoned and battle-hardened Mandalorians coming from off-world, and it's almost as if these Tuskens and Mandos have mutual respect for one another. Why is this? Why are the Mandalorians and Tuscan Raiders getting along so well? Is it because they have shared cultural values, or have the Tuscan Raiders changed? Well, that's what we're going to be taking a look at today. Maybe you're thinking about traveling to Tatooine yourself, and you've read how dangerous the situation is there and are concerned for your own safety. Well, I'll take that as a cue to tell you about today's sponsor, OwnASaber.com. They have a New Year special from now until January 20th. All lightsabers they sell are 20% off, and anyone who buys a lightsaber will also enter a giveaway, in which 3 customers will win a free Lightbearer Xenopixel lightsaber. Winners of this contest will be announced on their Instagram page, and they'll also be notified personally via email. Also, for Generation Tech fans, use the discount code MEOW, that's all caps. Now, one of the major issues about how people see Tuscan Raiders comes from the fact that the only people who seem to have any knowledge about them were the moisture farmers on Tatooine. These were hardy and relatively simple people trying to squeak out a living in the outer edges of the galaxy. They had come here either by choice to escape the chaos of the core, or were forced to come out here because of economic disparity and a lack of financial options. These individuals were too focused on learning how to survive to pay any attention to the culture of the local hostile bandits that lived in their area. To make matters worse, the Tuscan Raiders were already very hostile to outsiders because of their previous experiences. Before the first wave of moisture farmers and homesteaders arrived at Tatooine, small mining operations were the only formed presence on Tatooine, and naturally these corporate entities had a very negative interaction with the Tuscan Raiders. First, you have the communications barrier. The Tuscan Raiders speak their own language and have problems communicating with outsiders, and often have to resort to hand signals in order to communicate with others, which is how Boba Fett and Din Djarin are able to communicate with the Tuscan Raiders. These corporate miners arrived on Tatooine with really just one purpose, and that is to survey the local area for potential mining operations. Unfortunately, they found nothing of worth. For the most part, these corporations saw the Tuscan Raiders as just another cost associated with doing business. The corporations perceived the Tuskens as a threat as a result. Mining security forces would teach the Tuscan Raiders to not trust outsiders very quickly. Then you have the Tuscan Raiders themselves. These individuals, first and foremost, were survivalists, living in one of the harshest environments in the galaxy. What makes the Tuscan Raiders so interesting is that they don't seem to have evolved on a desert planet. There are no biological features on the Tuscan Raiders that seem to help them specifically to survive in these elements. Got no extra hump on the back for carrying water, no longer eyelashes to keep sand out of your eyes or mouth. Instead, the Tuscan Raiders seem to have devolved from an advanced culture and were forced to essentially become primitive hunter-gatherers because of the collapse of their society. And so, like all sentient beings who were placed in a tough situation, the Tuskens were able to evolve their culture and belief systems to help them survive on this planet. And because Tatooine can no longer support large populations, nations were broken down into small tribes, and each one of these tribes adopted very different beliefs and views designed to help them survive the terrible planet they were stuck on. The Tuscan Raiders were not a monolith. Each clan was made up of around 20 to 30 individuals, and depending on the personality and beliefs of the chief, what the clan did and how it interacted with outsiders could vary widely. Now, many of these Tuscan factions were quite violent and saw outsiders like mining companies as blasphemous groups who stole their water and territory. For the Tuskens, this was a crime that deserved death.
Those Tuskens walk like men, but they're vicious, mindless monsters.
Had either side been more open-minded towards one another, there could have been mutual benefits. The Tuskens would have gained access to new technologies to better and advance their lives, and the Offworlders would have greatly benefited from the Tuskens' knowledge about the planets. When Boba Fett is captured by the Tuscan Raiders, we learn that not all Tuscan tribes are extremely violent or unreasonable. Some tribes, like the one that Din Djarin ran into, were willing to enter into agreements with the settlers of Freetown. Together, these two groups of individuals would fight off a mutual enemy, a massive Krayt dragon. This agreement led to many benefits for both sides. The tribe that Boba Fett was captured by was initially hostile to Boba Fett, but once Boba Fett had shown them his own worth, they began teaching him in their warrior ways, and in return Boba Fett helped them defeat the Pike Syndicate, who kept running spice through their territory without paying tribute. Other tribes, however, like the ones who started a conflict with the Skywalker Lars family, would be utterly obliterated by Anakin Skywalker after they killed his mother. When Anakin turns to Darth Vader, the one thing that would remain was his hatred for the Tuscan Raiders, and so he would carry out one more massacre against the Sand People. Other Tuscan Raiders would start conflicts with Obi-Wan Kenobi and would also suffer heavy losses as a result. This, combined with the continuous encroachment of off-world settlers and also the very harsh environment they lived in, meant that the more violent tribes would end up destroying themselves much quicker than the more peaceful Tuscan tribes. But what really made Din Djarin and Boba Fett get along with the Tuscan Raiders so well? Well, it was a shared warrior culture. Both groups come from extremely rigid warrior societies and were trained from birth to be excellent fighters. Sure, the Mandalorians were far more technologically advanced than the Tuskens, but the Mandos appreciated the Tuskens' warrior spirit, resilience, and survival abilities. Boba Fett, despite being treated terribly by the Tuskens, eventually sees their tough plight and joins their side out of respect. Din Djarin does the same thing and even brings the local people of Freetown together with the Tuscan Raiders to help both sides survive. The Tuscan Raiders, on the other hand, probably sensed how calm and deadly Din Djarin and Boba Fett were when they first saw them, and correctly identified the Mandos as great warriors. In Din Djarin's case, his suit of Beskar armor probably made him look godlike to the Raiders. The fact that he has also covered his entire body and face in a similar way to the strict Tuscan clothing traditions also makes him much more approachable to the Tuskens. Din Djarin, who was a part of the Children of the Watch, followed a belief system that required him to never remove his helmet in front of others. The Tuskens actually had very similar beliefs about removing their clothing in front of strangers as well. The Tuscan Raiders, like the Mandalorians, treasured their tools of the trade. The Mandalorians had their meticulously crafted Beskar armor, and the Tuscan Raiders had their special Gaddafi sticks. The Mandalorians, like the Tuscan Raiders, were also misunderstood by the galaxy and almost driven to extinction because of their warrior-like tendencies. And so individuals like Boba Fett and Din Djarin were able to recognize many similarities between themselves and the Tuscan Raiders, which is why ultimately they would join up with these indigenous warriors. Now, first contact usually leads to miscommunication, which unfortunately leads to frustration, which can usually lead to outright violence and conflict. When we can't relate or empathize with another group, it becomes easier to make them the other. This is unfortunately what happened on Tatooine until the arrival of Mandalorians like Din and Boba Fett. The corporal miners and moisture farmers were just too weak and afraid to truly understand the Raiders, and vice versa. The Mandalorians, as usual, were very secure about their own abilities on the battlefield, and so they approached the Tuscan Raiders, ironically, with a much more open mind. We can all learn a lesson from the settlement of Tatooine. Instead of using our own culture to judge other cultures, what seems to be more useful is understanding another individual's culture so you can understand why they act the way they do. Empathy and mutual understanding are the key to a better society and will guard us from unnecessary loss of life and limb. So there you have it, guys. These are the reasons why the Tuscan Raiders seem to get along very well with the Mandalorians. Maybe this will lead to some future cooperation between settlements like Freetown and that Tuscan Raider tribe that Ginger Rin walked into. This could potentially make Tatooine a much more habitable place in the near future. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. And as usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.